All right, man. So I got some real tough questions for you, man. We got to talk about this. First of all, before we go anywhere, we need to know, talk to us about your newest books that you got on the market.
Oh man. First and foremost, giving all praise to the Almighty, the power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I had the luxury within the last couple of months of just kind of resetting my personal life and my mental well-being, digging in the crates and completing many things that I had in the making. One of those many things were a series of books. So I completed a total of 4 books within the last 4 to 5 months. Three of which I already released on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles, and one of them actually became a Barnes and Noble bestseller as well as a brand new #1 new release. I'm very happy about that. The books are entitled The Messiah Codex, Volume 1 and 2, as well as Patriarchs of the Covenant, which is a follow up to my book about women empowerment from the perspective of the Torah, which is called Matriarchs of the Covenant. In 2017, I wrote a book that spoke towards the empowerment of women in the Bible entitled Matriarchs of the Covenant. This year, 2023, I just released Patriarchs of the Covenant, which speaks towards empowerment for the men.
All right, brother. You got a part 1 and a part 2, the Messiah Codex,
Yes, sir.
volume 1 and 2. How long did it take you to write these books, brother?
Messiah Codex, Volume 1.
And what is the response you're getting from the people so far?
Oh, the response is amazing, man. If you go on my YouTube channel, Lexx TV, I have people that already did video reviews for these books. The book is getting amazing, credit. A lot of people, the reviews are already up on Amazon. It's very, very good. I had the luxury of setting up a couple of lectures that are forthcoming, so I'm very happy and proud of these most recent accomplishments of mine, and I'm always up to bringing it to platforms that are noteworthy and worthwhile to give it voice.
And see, this is what I'm talking about right here. This is why I separate this brother from a lot of the crazy stuff that's going on. He's putting in work for the community, for his community, and for those who may be interested in being an Israelite, the Old Testament. So talk to us, brother. What is the difference between the Old Testament and the New School, the New Testament Hebrews?
Old Testament Hebrews believe that a Messiah, as it were, has not come as yet. Old Testament Hebrews believe that the Torah is the modality and means for the attainment of righteousness and salvation for the black man and the black woman and the world moreover. What used to be true in our communities is that we thought that Messianic Israelites just believed that a Messiah has already come, and that one should just believe in this Messiah's ministry, his resurrection, and his death, and that through that one would attain salvation. However, through meeting up with brothers like Elder Hashar, Priest Daniela, even Brother Divine Prospect, I would say that we have the comfortable luxury of being enlightened towards knowing that they don't see it the same as Christians do. They believe, just like Old Testament Israelites, that the Torah is necessary for salvation, except that they believe in a man whom I refer to as Yeshua and whom you hear them refer to as Yahushua, who has came and will come. That is one of the main fundamental differences between what is called a Torah Israelite or an Old Testament Israelite versus a Messianic New Testament Israelite.
When I first met you, you was totally against Yeshua. You was totally against Jesus Christ. You was totally against Jesus ever even existing. Do you now retract from that statement, or are you still saying now that you believe that there was a man by the name of Jesus Christ, you might call him Yeshua, whatever you call him, existed? Because every Israelite I know that's Old Testament does not believe in Yeshua, whether you call him Jesus or Yeshua or whatever. You would be the first one that believes in a man by the name of Yeshua or Jesus Christ. that exist on the planet. Are you retracting that now, or do you still believe in Yeshua?
So let me say something that I'm hoping will be revelatory for those who have never heard me say it. I've always believed that Yeshua is a person that existed. During the Cameron Trial series of debates and even the discussions that led up to it, I went on record to say I was against the narrative that is spoken of him in the New Testament, but I was never against the notion of him being a historical person, even though I come from a community where he's pretty much considered ahistorical or non-historical, right? But I'm a free thinker. I have my own mind, right? I've done my own research. And so through my own research and having my own mind, I've come to the conclusion years ago that Yeshua is a historical personality. However, as it pertains to his doctrine as put forth in the Gospels, that's something that I always challenge. In fact, that's something that I would always, take my dagger, as it were, and go head hunting. But I want to say that one thing that's beautiful about a true intellectual is that we should always be in the update of our information. You should always challenge yourself to be, number one, a free thinker. And if you truly believe in the information you have, then there should be no reason why every single year you spend laborious hours going through that information to make sure that what it is that you hold to be true is in fact the truth. In so doing, with Yeshua's doctrine as put forth in the Gospels, within the last 5 to 7 years, I have completely revolutionized my thinking as it pertains to Yeshua, where I no longer demonize or attack him, but in fact, I see him as a prolific personality. In fact, let the record be shown, I see him as a messianic personality, especially in his era.
Woo! Damn, that's like a big change right there in your teaching, in your doctrine. Because I'm quite sure your teacher didn't teach you that, brother.
No, of course not.
Right, there you go. So what brought about the change? Was it people like Daniel Allah, Captain Tazariot? Because if the mighty Hebrew was here, the mighty Hebrew would probably differ with you or disagree with you on this whole thing about Yeshua. You see? So what brought about the change? Was it members in the community that you came across?
It's a good question. These are good questions. So the first thing I want to make sure that we're doing is contextualizing my views, right? When I say that I revolutionized my thinking as it pertains to him, that doesn't necessarily mean that I think and feel the same way about him as the greater whole of messianics in the community, right? That's an altogether different scenario. What I'm saying, and I want to be very clear for the record, is that I see him today as a messianic figure, especially in the era that he lives in. And not only do I no longer challenge his teachings, but I put great respect on it when viewed in context. And so, although I come from a school of thought that completely rejected him, I had the luxury of being around books such as Judea Trembles Under Rome, which is a book written by Rudolph R. Windsor, the esteemed author From Babylon to Timbuktu. Everybody knows this book. Very few people know that Rudolph Windsor went on to author about 4 or 5 more books in total, one of them also being The Palm Tree of Deborah and the Prophecies of Nostradamus. So in his book entitled Judea Trembles Under Rome, that was the very first time that I saw a picture painted of Yeshua as a revolutionary. And this goes back to the year 1998, when my brother that introduced me to this way of life, his name is Akiva Ben Yehuda, the son of Crown Prince Zerubbabel Ben Yehuda. When he lent me his father's book, Judea Trembles Under Rome, in the year 1998, that's when I first began to see Yeshua as a revolutionary. So I want to be clear on that. However, I do want to say this. To say that this newfound ideal within me should in some sense mesh well with every messianic thinking, that wouldn't be accurate. Because even in the messianic community, they don't all share the same views of Yeshua. So I don't wish to be put in a pot with everyone. I wish to move as I've always been, as a free thinker and as a free spirit.
I'm not quite convinced with you, my brother, yet. I'm not quite convinced.
That's fine.
But hold on, let me say this. I am really not convinced. I think you doing this to unify the Israelites with you. I think you are doing this just to bridge the gap and to be, just to unify the Israelites. Because can you find Jesus in the Torah? Will you find Jesus in the Torah, brother? Can you find him?
So let's say this, and let's be clear. This is one of the things that revolutionized my thinking as it pertains to the Messiah on a whole and Yeshua specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a community that taught that the Messiah and the coming of the Messiah is certainly a Torah-based teaching, but it begins predominantly in the books of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and then what we call the minor prophets. That's where we find him. And the New Testament, on the other hand, says that the teaching of the Messiah and the awareness and identity of the Messiah can be found all throughout the scriptures, from Genesis to Revelation. That's something that the New Testament says, which I thought, coming from the Old Testament school, that's you got to be Christian to say stuff like that. However, I went back into the archives of what is referred to as the oral tradition. The oral tradition, as it is penned and written, in many ways precedes the written record that we have, what we call today the Torah. In going inside of the oral tradition says all of the prophets and all of the scriptures only spoke of the Mashiach and his coming and his days. That's inside the oral tradition. That has nothing to do with the New Testament. So in going inside of that work and seeing it for myself, I decided to take some notes. And I decided to rigorously research, because one of the things I said to myself, Sonny, and I want you to really walk with me on this, and I want your panel, your community to walk with me on this. I said, if Yeshua garnered a significant amount of followers from among his people in the first century Common Era, then what is it exactly that our ancestors, and I say and, I'm speaking of the Israelite, what is it that the Israelite ancestors saw in him as proof of revelation of being said Messiah? In other words, in the community that I come from, we would scoff at messianics and say, most of y'all don't even understand Hebrew, and that's why y'all accept Yeshua as the Messiah. Like, first of all, his name ain't Yahweh, we say it's Yeshua. See, y'all don't know Hebrew. And when you go into books like Isaiah 7:14, it's not saying a virgin is with child, it calls her a young woman, right? So y'all don't know Hebrew. But hold on, son. While that might be true in some sense to say today, with Israelites that just woke up 30, 40, 50, maybe 60 years ago, what about in the first century Common Era? Jews who accepted Jesus, they didn't know Hebrew? They all knew Hebrew. It was their first language. So I don't think that they had a language issue when they accepted him. The tradition spoken of him, they all were privy to, because the same oral tradition that I'm speaking of is being recorded in the era that he lives in, and is validating major parts of his story and his narrative. In uncovering that type of what I would refer to as a panoramic look, that's when I began to say to myself, it's time to really re-examine everything that I was given once by my teachers. And this doesn't take away from the greatness and intellect of the teachers that came before me, who some are still with me today, because let's say this, one of my teachers, and I'm even going to speak his name, Hanasi Sapor ben Zebulun, Prince Sapor, he would always say that the wise change often. And his basis for saying that the wise change often is that when we encounter new information and we see that it is right, exact, and true, then one should always be in the update of said information. So if the wise change often, because one should always be in the update of one's information, then I should be congratulated and celebrated for these views and not hated or demonized. And if anyone feels otherwise, well, there's debate arenas where we can have those discussions, right?